So now I would like to go into further detail and see what actually is the important information which needs to be every time included in transfer agreements, both material and data. Well, we'll begin with the most self-explanatory part again. The name and the full address of the providing and the receiving institutions need to be indicated. The name, title, and date of signature, which is the date of the execution of the agreement and of the legal representative, also the PI sometimes signs, are necessary to be inside these agreements. And practicalities regarding the purpose for which the data or the material, depends on the case, are being transferred need to be described thoroughly. We also have inside an annex a detailed description of the data and of the material that are transferred. And of course, the transfer process, this is also something very important that is included in these agreements. And it's exactly at these points that the cooperation with the PI is absolutely necessary. Of course, all the annexes and the appendices form an integral part of the agreements, as this stands for all the agreements generally speaking, so they are also legally binding between the parties. Parties should take careful notice of these annexes. The content must be drafted in a very careful and detailed way. The costs related to the data material transfer and the party that bears these costs and payment conditions need to be specified. Sometimes the material is transferred for in exchange of a specific amount of money, but sometimes, especially in the settings of academia research, this is transferred for free. So the party which provides the material handles the cost for the shipping of the material. Other important information that must be included in these transfer agreements is the description of how and by whom the data material will be used. And when we're talking about this, we also talk about not the PI per se, but also the people working with him, the researchers in the laboratory. So the recipient acknowledges that this material will always belong to the provider, and this is a specific term that we always include in these agreements. And there is also a confidentiality term which binds the people mentioned above. That means not just the PI, but the whole group, the people who do actual research on the material and the data that have been handled to them. And these are the people who are responsible to make use of this data material and to protect the confidentiality of all the information. So it's a very important term, this term of confidentiality, and goes hand in hand with by whom and how the material will be used. If the DTA involves transfer of personal data from the EU to third countries, then compliance with the GDPR rules now in place is absolutely essential. And I would also add at this point, also you need to take into very, very much careful consideration, the national rules, because not only GDPR, but also the National Data Protection Acts also do apply. Warranties and liability terms are also terms of significant importance for each of the parties. Waivers of responsibility and further use of data and material needs to be specifically described in MTAs. The effective date, as we said before, can either be the last signature. It's usually the date of the last signature, which means that whichever party signs last, that will be the effective date of the transfer agreement. Or we can agree in the beginning that the effective date will just be another one, and this needs to be significantly stated in the beginning of the agreement. Whichever road parties decide to take, both are valid as long as they both agree.